The intergalactic summit was in full swing, and Dr. Ethan Grayson, Earth's representative, sat at the long oval table, surrounded by alien dignitaries. The room buzzed with a mix of voices, some excited, others skeptical. The Dracs, with their cold, calculating presence, sat at the head of the table, their glowing eyes scanning the humans like specimens under a microscope. Grayson kept his posture rigid, trying to mask the unease that tugged at his chest. "This is truly fascinating." A Drax ambassador, Vroth, leaned forward, his elongated fingers tapping the table with unsettling precision. Humanity, a fledgling species, attempting to join the galactic community. How quaint. The remark was laced with condescension, but Grayson held his tongue. The Dracs were known for their disdain toward less advanced species. Humanity had been invited to this summit not out of respect, but as a formality, a chance for the galaxy's more powerful civilizations to examine the humans like curiosities. The summit had begun with trivial discussions, trade agreements, mineral exchanges, diplomatic gestures, but the air in the room had thickened. Grayson couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The Dracs seemed too disinterested, too distracted by their own superiority, to truly engage with any of the humans present. Without warning, a sudden burst of static cut through the calm, followed by a cascade of electronic distortion. The communication systems blinked out, and for a brief, unnerving moment, the entire summit hall was bathed in silence. The Drax delegation immediately sprang into action. Vroth's eyes narrowed. His voice, usually composed, now carried a dangerous edge. "This is no accident. Find the source." Grayson's heart rate quickened. The signal wasn't random. It was deliberate. Someone had hacked the summit's encrypted systems. As the room descended into chaos, Grayson instinctively stood up, his mind racing. Amid the scrambling security personnel, his assistant, Leela, was already moving with an almost unnatural precision. She had always been quiet, reserved, a researcher by trade. But today, she was different. Her eyes scanned the room with an intensity that struck Grayson as almost predatory. Before he could ask her what was going on, Leela disappeared into the shadows at the far side of the room, her movements swift and sure. The Dracs began to shout orders, but Grayson barely heard them over the rising tension. Something was happening, something bigger than an ordinary malfunction. He turned to see Leela at the summit's control panel, her fingers flying over the console with a skill that was unsettling. The static cleared, the systems rebooted, and for a split second, Grayson saw a flash of data on the screen, something he wasn't supposed to see. A symbol flickered for an instant before it vanished, an ancient sigil that he couldn't place, but that seemed somehow familiar. The hunter's mark. The room fell into uneasy silence, and all eyes turned toward Grayson, who was still staring at the screen. Vroth's piercing gaze locked onto him, a slow smile curling at the edges of his lips. "It seems Earth's primitive species has a few tricks after all. How curious." Grayson's thoughts raced, but before he could respond, Leela reappeared at his side, her expression unreadable. The Dracs were still watching, waiting for an explanation. I don't know what just happened," Grayson muttered, his voice unsteady, as much to himself as to Vroth. But deep inside, he knew something had shifted. Something far beyond simple technology was at play. And whatever it was, it had just been triggered. Cliffhanger. A hidden message blinked into view on the summit's central screen. It wasn't from any known species. It was a single line of text. "Humanity is not what you think it is." The summit ended in chaos. The strange interference had rattled the Dracs and left the other delegates on edge, but no one seemed to know where it came from. As the meeting adjourned, Grayson returned to his quarters in the human diplomatic station, his mind racing. The words on the screen, "Humanity is not what you think it is," haunted him. Leela hadn't said much since the incident. She was the one who had triggered the mysterious signal, after all. When Grayson had approached her in the aftermath, she had simply nodded, her usual calm demeanor barely disturbed. But there was something else in her eyes, something he couldn't place. It was as if she knew more than she was letting on. Now, hours after the summit, Grayson stood before a darkened terminal in his private office. His hand shook as he keyed in a secure code that he had never before used. The system hummed to life, revealing a hidden set of files. A personal log from Professor James Harrow, a long-dead archaeologist who had disappeared decades ago, right before Earth had officially made first contact with the alien races. Grayson's eyes skimmed through the files. Harrow had always been a fringe researcher, obsessed with the idea that humanity's origins weren't entirely terrestrial. Most of his colleagues had dismissed him, but the fragments of his research uncovered by Grayson painted a different picture. Earth was not the cradle of humanity, merely a reset. Harrow's final report, dated just before his disappearance, was the most chilling. He had written about an ancient artifact, a heart of the void, hidden deep beneath the surface of Earth. The heart, according to Harrow's research, was a powerful relic tied to an extinct race of galactic warriors known as the Hunters. These beings had fought in a war eons ago to protect the galaxy from an unknowable darkness, and their genetic legacy had been embedded in humanity's DNA. The more Grayson read, the more his heart pounded. Harrow's final entry spoke of a cryptic discovery, a sigil much like the one Grayson had glimpsed on the summit's screen. It was a map, or perhaps a key, leading to something far greater than anyone could imagine. Without hesitation, Grayson contacted Leela. He needed her now. Her expertise had always been invaluable, and he was sure that she could help him decipher Harrow's findings. But when she arrived at his quarters, something about her was different. There was an urgency to her steps, and her face, usually a mask of professionalism, now carried a hint of something darker. "You found it, haven't you?" she said softly, not even bothering to sit. Her voice had a cold edge, one Grayson hadn't heard before. "You found what Harrow was searching for." Grayson hesitated, then nodded. "I don't know what it all means yet, but I think we need to go deeper, much deeper. There's an artifact, the heart of the void. It's here, beneath us, hidden beneath Earth. The Dracs are searching for it, and so are the Voidborn." Leela's eyes flickered with something Grayson couldn't quite read. She took a long breath, clearly struggling to maintain composure. "It's not just the Dracs or the Voidborn who are searching for it," she said slowly. "We are too. You and I, Ethan. I've been waiting for this moment, for the truth to come out." Grayson stared at her, disbelief settling like a heavy stone in his chest. "What do you mean we?" Leela's eyes met his, her gaze intense. "I am not who you think I am. I am not just your assistant. I've been trained in the ways of the Hunters, as was my family before me. And now, it's time for you to awaken to your true purpose, Ethan." Cliffhanger. Before Grayson could respond, the room's lights flickered and alarms blared. The Dracs were coming. They knew he was on to something. They wouldn't let him uncover the secrets of Earth without a fight. The alarm screamed through the corridors of the human diplomatic station, signaling an incoming threat. Grayson barely had time to react. His mind was reeling from Leela's unexpected confession. She had been trained as a hunter, part of a secret lineage tasked with protecting the galaxy. But now was not the time to question her. The Dracs were closing in. They couldn't afford to waste a second. Leela grabbed Grayson by the arm, pulling him toward the back exit. "We need to move now." Her voice was urgent, tinged with something Grayson hadn't heard before. Fear. He followed her down narrow, dimly lit hallways, the rhythmic pulse of the alarms echoing in his ears. He'd always trusted Leela, but the revelation about her heritage had shaken him to the core. What did it mean for him? For humanity? Was he truly destined to follow in the footsteps of the Hunters, as she claimed? They'd reached the underground garage, where their shuttle was waiting. Lila didn't hesitate, punching in a code and opening the hatch. Grayson was about to ask her where they were going when he saw the Drax soldiers in the distance, their tall, sleek figures moving swiftly toward the station. The tension in the air was palpable, thick with the promise of violence. "We're not safe here," Leela said, urgency in her voice. "The Dracs will be on us within minutes. I've already sent a signal to the Lund Coalition. They'll meet us in the Outer Rim." Grayson, still in disbelief, barely had time to process her words. "The Lund Coalition? How do you—" "Not now," she interrupted sharply, launching the shuttle into the air. The hum of the engines was a comforting sound, but the weight of their situation hung over them like a storm cloud. As they broke through Earth's atmosphere and into space, Grayson turned to Leela, his mind spinning. "You said you've been trained as a hunter. Does that mean you've known about this for a long time? The heart of the void, the Dracs, the Voidborn." Leela's face remained unreadable as she guided the shuttle into hyperspace. "I've always known," she admitted softly. "My family has kept this secret for generations. The hunters were our protectors, but they were destroyed in a war long before I was born. I was raised to survive, to understand the ancient texts, the codes. When we discovered the artifact beneath Earth, I knew it was only a matter of time before the Dracs came for it. And for you." Grayson absorbed her words, the weight of her confession pressing down on him. The truth was far more complicated than he had ever imagined. Humanity's history, his history, was tangled in a web of galactic conflict, secret wars, and forgotten legacies. "What does it all mean?" Grayson asked, his voice hoarse. Leela turned to him, her eyes locking onto his with a fierce intensity. "It means you're not just a diplomat, Ethan. You're a hunter, and you're the key to unlocking the heart of the void. The Dracs know this. The Voidborn know this. They're both hunting you, and they won't stop until they get what they want." Grayson felt a chill run down his spine. The enormity of his role in the galaxy was beginning to settle in. But there was something more, something deep inside him, something that had begun to stir when he first touched that artifact on Earth, a power that was only just beginning to awaken. As they shot through the stars, a new clarity settled in Grayson's mind. He wasn't just running from the Dracs. He was being pulled into something far greater than he had ever imagined. Cliffhanger. Without warning, the shuttle shuddered violently. Lila's hands flew over the controls, her eyes wide with alarm. Something's wrong. Something's out there. A new, terrifying presence filled the darkness of space. An enormous, looming ship appeared out of nowhere, its dark hull practically absorbing the stars around it. The Voidborn had arrived. The shuttle lurched again as another violent tremor shook its frame. Grayson grabbed the nearest console for support, his heart pounding. The presence outside was palpable, like a shadow over the stars. The Voidborn had arrived, and their ship was massive, far beyond anything Grayson had ever seen. Its hull was obsidian, reflecting nothing, as if it existed outside of space itself. It seemed to absorb light, its edges blurred like a shifting mirage. Leela cursed under her breath, her hands flying over the shuttle's controls. "We need to move now," she shouted, her voice strained with urgency. "The Voidborn ship is locking onto us. They've already pinged our location. They know exactly where we are." Grayson's pulse quickened. He had no idea what the Voidborn were capable of, but everything about this situation screamed danger. The weight of their arrival wasn't just a new threat. It felt like the galaxy itself was holding its breath. As Leela fought to maneuver the shuttle, Grayson glanced at the radar. The Voidborn ship had begun to close in, faster than should have been possible. The sleek, terrifying silhouette of their vessel filled the screen, eclipsing nearby asteroids like they were nothing more than dust. "They're faster than I expected," Grayson muttered, eyes glued to the growing presence of the Voidborn vessel. "How are they doing that?" "They've mastered the art of bending light and space," Leela explained, her tone tight. "They don't just travel faster than light. They distort the fabric of reality itself. It's what makes them so dangerous." Suddenly, the ship's proximity warning blared. Grayson looked up in horror. The Voidborn ship had expanded its mass, suddenly larger than it had seemed, and its gravity field began to distort the shuttle's trajectory. They were being pulled toward it. "We're being dragged in," Grayson shouted. "Leela, can you break free?" "I'm trying." Leela's fingers danced over the control panel, but it was clear they were losing the battle. The Voidborn ship was too powerful. With each second, the shuttle was pulled closer, the vastness of space swallowed by the ship's oppressive mass. Grayson's mind raced. They couldn't just sit here and wait to be captured. They needed to escape, and fast. Then, just as all seemed lost, the shuttle's systems flickered. A voice, distorted by static, crackled through the comms. "Grayson, Lila, do not attempt to flee." It was Vroth, the Drax ambassador from the summit. His voice was calm, almost eerily so. "We've known you were leaving Earth, and we've been watching. You're not just running from the Voidborn. You're running from us, and we cannot let that happen." Grayson's blood went cold. Betrayal. The Drax, who had seemed indifferent at the summit, had been tracking them the entire time. Leela's eyes widened in shock. "Vroth, no, you're working with them. All this time. After everything we've done." The voice on the other end of the comms grew darker. "You misunderstand, Lila. The Drax and the Voidborn are not enemies. They never were. They have been allies for centuries, waiting for humanity to awaken, waiting for you to make the first move. And now you have." The full weight of Vroth's words hit Grayson like a hammer. The Drax, once seen as antagonistic to humanity, were not their enemies. They were a part of something much larger, a cosmic web of manipulation, and humanity had been caught in the middle. "Why?" Grayson asked, his voice shaking. "What do you want with us?" "With me." Vroth's voice softened, almost contemplative. "You are the key to everything, Grayson. You and your kind. The Hunters left behind something far more powerful than you realize. We intend to use that power, and now, so do the Voidborn. You will help us unlock it, or you will die." The comms went silent, leaving Grayson and Leela to process the betrayal. The situation had escalated beyond anything they had expected. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were caught in a galactic struggle for something ancient, something powerful. Leela turned to Grayson, her face pale but resolute. "We can't let them win. We have to find the heart of the void before they do." Grayson nodded, his mind already racing through their options. Escape was no longer the priority. If they didn't stop the Drax and Voidborn now, the galaxy would fall into darkness. Cliffhanger. The shuttle's emergency systems began flashing red. The Voidborn ship was closing in. They had moments before it swallowed them whole. The shuttle shuddered violently as the Voidborn ship's gravitational field intensified, pulling them closer by the second. Grayson and Leela were running out of time. The emergency lights flashed in rapid succession, casting their faces in an eerie red glow. The hum of the ship's engines was drowned out by the oppressive force that surrounded them, a constant pressure squeezing at their chests. "We can't outrun them," Leela said, her voice taut with frustration. "Not with this ship. We're not getting out of here." Grayson looked at her, determination hardening in his gaze. "Then we fight. We have no choice." Leela's eyes flicked to him in surprise. "Fight? You think we can fight the Voidborn with a shuttle? We're sitting ducks. We don't have the luxury of thinking small." Grayson shot back, his hands gripping the console. He focused on the screens before him. "The Drax may have us cornered, but they're not expecting this." Leela's brow furrowed as she examined the console beside him. "What do you mean?" Grayson's mind raced. He'd seen something earlier, something that hadn't quite made sense until now. Harrow's final log had mentioned the heart of the void being able to interface with certain technologies. Ancient, powerful technologies that were beyond current understanding. He wasn't sure how, but something in the shuttle systems had triggered a response, and now was the moment to push it further. He quickly accessed the shuttle's more advanced subroutines. The shuttle's AI was integrated with the heart's signal when we left Earth. We've been piggybacking off its latent energy this whole time. Leela's eyes widened. "You're saying the heart of the void is somehow inside this ship. I'm not sure how or why, Grayson said, hands flying across the controls. But I think this ship is connected to it. We might be able to access its power source. The shuttle lurched again, more violently this time, as if the Voidborn ship were right on top of them. Grayson could hear the hum of weapons charging outside, feel the tension as their pursuers prepared to strike. We don't have much time, Leela warned, watching the countdown clock. They'll fire within moments. What are you going to do? Grayson took a deep breath. Activate the secondary drive. I'll tap into the heart's signal directly. This might give us just enough of a boost to escape their gravity. Leela gave him a skeptical look, but nodded quickly. Do it. As Grayson initiated the sequence, a pulse of energy surged through the shuttle's core. The ship groaned in protest, systems flickering and sparking. The consoles blinked to life with new, unfamiliar data, coordinates, ancient symbols, and faint signals that seemed to be coming from the Voidborn ship itself. A deep, resonating hum filled the shuttle, vibrating through Grayson's bones. The air felt thick with energy, like static before a storm. Suddenly, the Voidborn ship's weapons systems malfunctioned. Grayson watched in disbelief as the targeting array wavered, the energy beams misfiring and dissipating harmlessly into the void. It's working, Leela whispered, awe and disbelief in her voice. You're actually tapping into the heart's power. But just as they began to feel a glimmer of hope, the console before them flickered, displaying an incoming transmission. Grayson hesitated before accepting it, knowing what it might mean. The screen crackled to life, revealing the shadowed figure. Vroth. You think you can escape? Vroth's voice was cold, venomous. You are fools if you think the heart can protect you. Grayson's fingers hovered over the controls, adrenaline surging. You've made a mistake, Vroth. You've underestimated humanity. Vroth's lip curled into a sinister smile. No, Grayson. Humanity is exactly what we expected. Weak, easily manipulated. But this time, you will not escape. We will have what we came for. And you will die knowing you failed. The transmission cut out, and the shuttle's power systems surged once again. Grayson fought to maintain control as the ship lurched forward, its engines now glowing with an unnatural light. The Voidborn ship loomed closer, but now they had a chance. A fragile one. Prepare yourself, Leela, Grayson said, his voice steady despite the chaos. We're going in. They plunged toward the Voidborn ship, the gravitational pull of its mass still trying to drag them in. But now they had a secret weapon, an ancient power buried beneath Earth, tied to something older than the stars themselves, and Grayson was determined to unlock it, no matter the cost. Cliffhanger. Just as the shuttle entered the Voidborn's outer perimeter, a brilliant flare of energy erupted from the heart of the Void's interface. It ripped through the fabric of space itself, opening a rift, a way through, but at a terrifying cost. Grayson's hand clenched the controls as he steered them toward the rift. Hold on, Leela. We're going in. Whether we survive or not is up to the heart. The rift pulsed with violent energy, a swirling vortex of light and shadow that tore through the fabric of space itself. Grayson's breath caught in his chest as he pushed the shuttle forward, feeling the immense gravitational pull of the Voidborn ship pulling at them with unrelenting force. The heart of the Void, still humming with untapped power, was their only chance. Hold on, Grayson shouted, his voice drowned by the roar of the shuttle's engines. Leela gripped the sides of her seat, her knuckles white, as the shuttle was drawn toward the rift. The ship bucked and shuddered, its frame groaning under the strain. The emergency systems screamed a warning, but Grayson refused to listen. He could feel the pulse of the heart deep within the shuttle's systems, faint, but growing stronger with every passing second. It was their lifeline, if they could just reach it. Grayson, we don't know what will happen once we go through that thing. Leela's voice was tight, laced with fear. We might be torn apart. I don't care, he said, his eyes locked on the widening rift. We have no choice. We'll either survive, or we won't. With a final violent lurch, the shuttle broke through the rift, the stars and void twisting into impossible shapes around them. Time itself seemed to stretch and bend. For a moment, Grayson could feel himself disoriented, the very essence of reality warping as they sped through a realm beyond comprehension. His senses flickered, as though the universe itself were flickering in and out of existence. But then, just as suddenly as it had begun, everything snapped back into place. The shuttle emerged from the rift into an uncharted region of space, the darkness more profound than anything Grayson had ever seen. There were no stars here, no galaxies, just an endless expanse of blackness. Leela's voice came through, ragged with disbelief. "Where are we?" Grayson's eyes scanned the empty void. "I don't know. But I think we just crossed into another dimension, or at least something close to it. This is a place outside the known universe." His words felt hollow in the silence of their surroundings. The rift had closed behind them, leaving them stranded in a place where nothing seemed real, and yet everything felt intensely alive. The heart of the void pulsed once more, but this time it was different. It was no longer a mere artifact. It was an entire network, a web of energy that spread outward, vast and ancient. The shuttle systems began to hum as if in response, and the heart's signal grew louder, more insistent. Grayson could feel it, reverberating in his chest like a heartbeat. But something else stirred within the depths of the void. A dark presence, shifting in the distance, moving toward them. "They'd followed us," Leela whispered, her voice a breathless warning. "The Voidborn, they found us." Grayson's grip tightened on the controls. They weren't alone. From the edge of the black expanse, a sleek, shimmering silhouette emerged. A ship, but not like the Voidborns. This was something far more ancient, far more alive. It was a vessel unlike anything Grayson had ever imagined. Organic in its design, its surface alive with pulsing lights and alien symbols. The ship was enormous, dwarfing their shuttle, and its presence felt suffocating. A deep, unsettling hum filled the air as it moved closer, like the sound of a sleeping giant awakening. "It's not the Voidborn," Leela muttered. "It's them." Grayson felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. "Who?" "The Hunters," she breathed, her eyes wide with realization. "This is their domain." Before Grayson could respond, the shuttle's comms crackled to life again. And this time, the voice was not Vroth's, nor was it any human's. It was something ancient, otherworldly. "You should not have come here, Grayson of Earth," the voice intoned, deep and resonant, echoing through the shuttle systems. "You have crossed into the realm of the Hunters, and you will not leave." Grayson's mind raced. They were trapped in a place outside time and space, surrounded by enemies who had been waiting for this moment. The Voidborn, the Dracs, and now the Hunters. Everyone was after the heart of the void. But why? What did it all mean? "Who are you?" Grayson demanded, his voice steadied despite the fear that gripped him. The voice responded, calm and calculating. "We are the keepers of the heart. We are its guardians, and we do not suffer the unworthy." Leela glanced at Grayson, her eyes filled with dread. "They're the ones who created the heart. They control it. And now they're deciding if we're worthy." Grayson's heart hammered in his chest. The realization struck him like a blow. The Hunters weren't just guardians. They were the ones who had woven the very fabric of the galaxy's power, the ones who had seeded humanity's future with their legacy. And now they had come to judge. Cliffhanger. A dark figure, cloaked in shadow, appeared on the screen, its face hidden behind an ancient helmet. "Prepare yourself, Grayson of Earth. Your trial begins now." The shuttle systems flickered as the dark figure's words echoed in Grayson's mind. The presence on the comms was as cold and ancient as the void itself. Every part of him screamed to flee, to find a way out, but he knew deep down that there was no escape. They were trapped in the heart of the Hunter's domain, and they had to face whatever lay ahead. The dark figure on the screen, still obscured behind its imposing helmet, motioned toward them. Grayson of Earth, Lila of the Hunters, you stand in the shadow of the heart, a relic of the cosmos. Your fate is now bound to it. Your trial begins. Lila was rigid, her face pale as she leaned forward, trying to make sense of what was happening. What trial? She whispered, almost to herself. The figure's voice vibrated through the shuttle again, calm but heavy with meaning. You have awakened the heart. You have chosen to wield its power. But power untested is power that consumes. To be worthy of the heart, you must prove your resolve. You must prove your purpose. Grayson's heart raced. He had no idea what that meant, but one thing was clear. This was no ordinary battle. There were no weapons, no escape. The only way through was forward, and he had no idea what the cost would be. Lila turned to him, her expression a mixture of fear and determination. I didn't expect this, she said quietly. The Hunters, they don't just give their power away. We have to earn it. But Grayson, this is beyond anything I've ever faced. I don't have a choice, Grayson muttered. Neither of us does. The shuttle systems began to hum louder, a warning signal flickering. The ancient ship was moving closer, its presence overwhelming. Through the shuttle's viewports, Grayson could see it. A massive living vessel, its surface pulsing with ancient light and strange symbols that seemed to shift as if alive. The ship dwarfed theirs, and yet it felt like it was breathing, watching, waiting. Then, without warning, the space around them warped. The stars and blackness of the void twisted, bending and shifting like liquid. The shuttle's controls went haywire, the dashboard flashing warning after warning. What's happening? Grayson shouted, struggling to keep the ship steady. The trial has begun, Lila said grimly, her hands gripping the console, trying to maintain control. We're being pulled into it, whatever it is. In the blink of an eye, they were no longer in the endless void. The stars and the dark expanse around them dissolved, replaced by a vast, luminous landscape. It was a place unlike any Grayson had ever seen, an ancient world, frozen in time, yet strangely alive. Towering obelisks of stone rose from the ground, carved with symbols Grayson couldn't understand. The ground beneath them was cracked, as if the earth itself had been torn apart by forces long forgotten. The shuttle's engines hummed weaker as it settled onto the ground with a gentle thud, as though it had been placed there by an unseen hand. Lila stood up slowly, her expression a mixture of awe and dread. This is a place out of time. It's not part of our universe. This is where the Hunters test their own. Grayson's breath caught in his throat. What happens here? How do we prove ourselves? The voice from the ship came again, this time resonating directly through their minds, bypassing the shuttle systems entirely. A heart tests not only strength but purpose. You will face your greatest fears, your deepest doubts. What you value most will be stripped from you. Only then will you know if you are worthy. A shudder ran through Grayson's spine. He had always thought of himself as someone who could handle any challenge, but facing something this alien, this incomprehensible, it shook him to his core. A sudden flash of light erupted from the obelisks. Grayson squinted, shielding his eyes as the light grew brighter, filling the entire landscape. The ground trembled beneath his feet, and the world seemed to dissolve again, warping and shifting, as if the very fabric of reality were being unraveled. And then, with a deafening crack, the world changed. Grayson found himself standing in a dark, ruined version of Earth. The skyline was shattered, cities burned to the ground, and the air was thick with smoke. The sun was barely visible behind a layer of ash. He turned around, and there, standing in front of him, was his mother. Her eyes were hollow, her face gaunt and lined with years of suffering. But it was her voice that struck him most, filled with grief. Why didn't you save me, Ethan? Why did you let this happen? Grayson's heart skipped a beat. His mother, dead for years, was standing before him, accusing him. He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. His throat was dry, his chest tight. Guilt, overwhelming guilt, slammed into him. He had failed her, hadn't he? His mind raced with the thousands of things he wished he could have done differently. But just as he reached out to her, the world around him began to crumble. The image of his mother flickered, her figure warping like smoke. The ground beneath his feet fractured, and with one last scream, she was gone, leaving only silence. The trial had begun. The hunters were testing him. Cliffhanger. Grayson fell to his knees, gasping for breath, the weight of the vision pressing down on him. The landscape around him began to collapse. A voice, distant but clear, rang in his ears. "This is only the beginning." Grayson's heart pounded in his chest, his breath ragged as the ground around him continued to crack and shift. The ruins of Earth, his Earth, dissolved before his eyes like a dream fading at dawn. His mother's haunting face was still etched in his mind, her words cutting deep. "Why didn't you save me?" He tried to stand, but the weight of guilt anchored him to the ground. He had been so consumed with the mission, with saving humanity, that he had never allowed himself to process the grief of her loss. Now here, in this place, his failure felt like an unbearable burden. But then, through the haze of emotion, a voice, his own, whispered inside his mind. "This is just a trial, Grayson. This is not real." The thought was like a spark in the darkness, pulling him from the depths of despair. He had to push forward. He had to face the truth, not just of the heart of the void, but of himself. He wasn't a child anymore. He had to let go of the past and confront the future. Grayson took a deep breath, focusing on the distorted horizon. The world around him twisted as if acknowledging his determination. The voices of his guilt and regret faded, replaced by a low hum, the same one he had heard when the heart had first activated in the shuttle. The air vibrated with energy, and a bright light burst from the ground beneath his feet, surrounding him with a golden aura. In the distance, the dark figure of the hunter reappeared, stepping through the shifting landscape. Its towering presence was no longer menacing. It was patient, observing. "You have faced your fear." The hunter's voice resonated, both familiar and alien. "Now you must face your purpose." Grayson's fists clenched, his mind racing. "What is my purpose? What do you want from me?" The hunter's glowing eyes seemed to pierce through him. The heart of the void was left for a reason. A great trial, a test of power and resolve is coming. The Voidborn and the Dracs are not the true enemy. They are pawns in a larger game, one that threatens all of existence. You are the one who will lead humanity in this war. Grayson stood tall, his gaze unwavering. "I'm no leader. I'm just a man trying to survive." The hunter's voice softened, as though acknowledging the truth in his words. "You are more than you know. The heart has chosen you, Grayson of Earth. It sees in you the potential to shape the future. The question is, are you ready to embrace it?" Grayson felt the weight of the hunter's words settle on him like a mantle, heavy but not unwelcoming. He had always been just a soldier, a man with a mission. But now, the heart of the void was calling to him, its power resonating in his blood. He had unlocked something deep within himself, something that had been buried for years, an understanding that the fight ahead was not just about survival. It was about leading humanity into the unknown, into a war they couldn't yet comprehend. He looked at the hunter, his voice steady now, full of newfound purpose. "I'm ready." The hunter's form shimmered, its figure blurring into light as it began to dissolve, leaving only a voice behind. "Then prove it, Grayson of Earth. The trial is over. But the real battle has just begun." The world around Grayson rippled like water, and in an instant, he was back aboard the shuttle, standing beside Leela. She was staring at him, her face filled with concern, her hands gripping the controls. "What happened?" Leela asked, her voice shaking. "Where are we?" Grayson took a deep breath, the weight of the trial still heavy on his shoulders, but now tempered by something else: resolve. He met her gaze, his eyes clear and focused for the first time in a long while. "We've passed the test," he said quietly, "and we're not alone anymore." Leela looked confused. "What do you mean?" "The heart. It's not just an artifact," Grayson explained. "It's a legacy. And we've been chosen to lead humanity into a war against something far worse than the Voidborn or the Drax. This is bigger than anything we've ever faced. The real fight starts now." The shuttle's sensors pinged, indicating that the Voidborn ship was no longer tracking them. Instead, it had turned back into the darkness of space, retreating into the void, as if recognizing the new force that had awoken. Leela's face paled, but she nodded, understanding the weight of Grayson's words. "We need to get back to Earth. We need to warn everyone." Grayson's gaze turned toward the stars outside the shuttle window. The universe stretched out before them, vast and mysterious, and for the first time, he felt a deep sense of clarity. The trial had not just been about proving his worth, it had been about awakening his potential. Humanity's place in the galaxy had changed, and now, with the heart of the void at his side, Grayson knew he was ready to face whatever came next. Cliffhanger. A distant, haunting cry echoed from the far reaches of space. It was the sound of something ancient, something far worse than the Voidborn. The war was far from over.